So this musing comes out of, is close enough good enough? Like, maybe close enough is absolutely perfect. My husband and I were at a friend's house, and we were putting around on this little putting green that they have, and Jay was aiming at a different ball. So he would line up with one ball and he would hit towards another ball instead of aiming for the holes. And I asked him why he was doing that. And he said it keeps them out of the holes, and so they're always ready for you, whether it's you or the next person that's playing. So instead of aiming for the hole, you aim for another ball, and you still have a target, and you're still trying to get practice at putting. And I was like, well, I guess that's pretty smart. So while he was putting around, we were also having kind of an in-depth discussion about a few of the other things going on in life. And we eventually moved to a different part of the putting green, and we ended up in this sand trap. And Jay just wanted to practice pitching it. I don't know the word. I'm not a golfer. Just kind of hitting it out of the sand trap. And he hit it, and it lobbed out, and it rolled across the green, and it sunk right into the hole. And I just jumped up and down. I was like so thrilled that he'd gotten the ball in the hole out of this sand trap. I was delighted. It doesn't take much that he had done this. And I congratulated him. I was so excited. And he said, well, it would have been great if that had been where I was aiming at. And I laughed because I was impressed. He was put out, and I thought, that's amusing. And I don't mean amusing as in funny. I meant amusing as in this kind of a journal writing, because how often are we heads down, focused on life, focused on the end product, focused on just getting through, and we don't necessarily see all of the hidden gems and the gifts that we're receiving along the way. It's the potter at the wheel, and the wheel is turning, and they spend countless hours honing their skills so that every lip and foot and curve can be absolutely just right, because they take such pride in their work. And countless pieces end up in the trash because they just aren't up to the potter's standards. And yet maybe some of those pieces that are a little bit different find homes in places that people really value, those added little bumps, lumps, and flumps on the pottery. Right now I'm thinking about this pottery. It's a wine glass that my cousin has, and the stem is curved, so the wine glass isn't straight up, but it was a handmade wine glass, and she asked the creator of it if they intended that. And they said, no, but I figured somebody might like it anyway. They weren't fond of it. They had two of them that had kind of melted sideways just a little bit in the kiln, and Penny loved them. She bought it. She took it home. She was delighted that she has this. And so whenever I go over to her house, I'm thrilled, because that is the glass that I like to drink, whatever it is, whether it's water or soda. I love to drink out of this funky little wine glass, because it just reminds me that life is to be joyful and enjoy the moment that we're at. The idea that if we do not hit the bullseye, we fail, I think is a fallacy. I think most of the time, if we just get on the board, we are lucky and we have succeeded. We don't have to be perfect. Everything we do does not have to be right in that really difficult to achieve center of the board. I'm reminded of one of my kids. I was going to a parent-teacher conference, and at this parent-teacher conference, the teacher was just baffled because my son was bored in class all the time. So he was a little bit challenging on occasion to deal with. And as we're sitting there and we're talking about things, she says, yeah, he's so bored. I don't think he's paying attention because he's all over the place. And yet I gave them this project the other day, and I said, okay, tell me about it. So she tells me about this project, and she had asked the kids to think outside the box for the solution. Like, expand, do something more than just this, because she said most kids, they have to have those parameters, and they stay in those parameters, and they are never actually stretching out to try to feel something new, do something new. So she was encouraging the kids to say, hey, try something new, go bigger. And most of the kids, like if this is the box, they were right maybe on the edge, close to, they had stretched, not a lot. But this box, my son was out here, like way outside the box. And she was baffled. How did you do this? The thing was, my son could explain to her every single step that he took to get from the center of the box to beyond. The fact that he could explain that to her, she was blown away. And instead of being frustrated that he was too far outside the box, she took a moment and she said, I'm giving you an A. Because you followed the directions. Think outside the box. Go a little bit further. So, me. I tend to think it has to be the bullseye. I want things to be like perfect. I just push a little too hard, go a little too far. I may run myself a little bit into the ground, just aiming for that perfection that I think needs to be there. And yet I'll tell you that oftentimes when I'm doing that to myself, if I take a moment and I step back, that one last thing that I added is usually the one last thing that I should remove. And if I take that back out, then it is even better than if I had continued going. It's that taking a moment to say, hey, where am I at? We are our own worst critics. We are our own worst enemy, pulling ourselves down, holding ourselves back, telling us we're not perfect enough, telling us we aren't going far enough, telling us, honey, you don't have to have a bullseye. Just get on the board. Just get on the board. Yeah, Jay, he had this great hit. It sunk. It was beautiful. He was distracted. The ball ended up, the ball that he was actually aiming for was only 3 inches away from the hole. He ended up 3 inches away from where he wanted to be, not 3 feet. He was totally on the board. My son thought so far out of the box, he followed directions. He was on the board. Now, the teacher initially thought he was wrong because he had gone so far out there. There are going to be people who think that you didn't do it right because that is their judgment, that is their thought, that is their process. And yet, you yourself need to recognize, see, believe, and feel that what you did is where you need to be, right? Just get on the board and step back and ask yourself a couple of questions. Did I get on the board? Am I close enough to where I needed to be? Whose expectations am I trying to live up to? Are they my own or are they someone else's? And not only that, but are those expectations realistic? Another thing, when you're going and you feel like you have fallen off or you've really missed the mark, think of the most recent time where you thought that you missed the mark completely, and think about all of the lessons you learned and all of the positive things that happened from that. And maybe you didn't miss the mark. Maybe it was all right on exactly where you needed to be. Sometimes I'm here to tell you that almost there is actually perfect.